All right. Hello, friends, pals, and mortal enemies, and welcome to the build guide and review for my take on the Alpha Frost Werewolf. Today we'll be going over the gear, the stats, the breakpoints, and my overall thoughts on the build. With that said, let's get into it. So, going over the items first, as with every druid, we have a talisman. We crafted the talisman. There are lots of guides on making talismans, so I won't necessarily post one myself. But I would say for the wolf build, you are focused on getting the stats for increased physical damage, adding physical damage, plus levels to attack skills, chance to gain onslaught, as well as further modifiers to add cold damage or fire damage or what have you. Socketed in, we've taken the 50% increased attack damage against rare uniques, as well as gained 5% of damage as extra of all elements. We do deal all elemental damage with the exclusion of chaos. So we deal shock, uh, frost, or cold, or whatever you want to call it, as well as fire. So gaining extra as all is very good. For our helmets, we have a high armor split with energy shield helmet. Focusing for the helmets, you want to focus on stats such as increased armor and energy shield, pluses to stats, pluses to chaos resistance, as well as percent of armor applies to elemental damage, thereby increasing our elemental damage. For our necklace, we're allocating heavy frost. I'll show this on the passive skill tree, but this just makes our cold skills that much better. We're focusing on getting increased armor, uh, extra base energy shield, percent increased energy shield, and again, getting plus levels to melee skills, as well as some resistances. For our rings, we have a fire resistance ring. We're adding fizz damage, flat fizz damage, percent lightning damage, resistances, as well as getting leech. Leech, very important, as we spend our life to cast or to use our abilities. On our other ring, we're using a prismatic ring. Uh, Again, percent to all elements, adding fizz damage, adding lightning damage, getting our resistances, and leeching more life. Between the two rings, we're leeching about 12% life from rings alone. For our body armor, we're using a Morior Invictus Grand Regalia, socketed with percent increases to armor, evasion, and energy shield, as well as plus to chaos resistance. For this build, the best stats to get are obviously the percent increased armor, evasion, and energy shield, the life regen per socket filled per second, increased global defenses per socket filled, and the plus to spirit, as this is a spirit heavy build. For our gloves, again, we have a split defense armor energy shield gloves, socketed with increased magnitude of non-damaging ailments we inflict, thereby we inflict more freezing to enemies. Again, we're focused on getting increased armor and energy shield, flat fizz damage, flat cold damage, plus to melee skills, as well as resistances. We're using a headhunter belt to steal rare monster modifiers, and we decided to go to plus strength and plus dexterity. On our boots, we've socketed chaos resistance, and we are using dual defense armor and energy shield. We're focused on gaining percent increased movement speed, percent increased armor and energy shield, resistances of any type, and then we've corrupted on more increased armor and energy shield. For our life flask, we're using a transcendent flask. This could be ultimate, this could be whatever. The part that matters is used when on low life and gaining the charge when we kill the enemies. For our charms, we're using the charm to prevent stun and defend with armor during stun. We're using the charm which grants immunity to freezing, as well as the charm that grants immunity to bleeding. And then, depending on what map we are in, we could also sub in the Fall of the Axe Silver charm, which is my speed is unaffected by slows. And when I am affected, I gain onslaught. Um, on our weapon set 2, we've got I don't think I have the right skills slotted, but we will check. On our weapon set 2, We use weapon set 2 mainly for the war cries, and we searched for a talisman that basically just gave us generic, like mid-roll stats such as accuracy rating, crit chance, leech, and the empower. This really doesn't matter because we're literally just using it to cast our war cries. Going into our skills, we have our auto attack or like our melee strike, which is shred, gaining 5 levels from the global modifiers, triggering ice fragments on hits on frozen enemies, socketed with elemental armament 2 to deal more elemental damage, rapid attacks for more attack speed, execute to deal 50% more damage against enemies below life, close combat because we're going to be auto attacking on top of enemies, as well as Garukan's Resolve, which is the maximum critical strike chance with Shred being 50%, but it can bifurcate. Oh, and I should show last auto attack being the big overhead slam. Next, we have Pounce. This is our mobility ability. Jump around the map. We have socketed in Freezing Mark. This is in order to, when we hit an area or when we jump into an area, we can freeze an enemy or potentially freeze an enemy. Also grants us damage gained as cold damage. We're also using Holy Descent, which is creating consecrated ground on landing, healing us. Cooldown recovery to reduce the cooldown of our jumps, let us jump more. Fist of War to ancestrally boost our jumps, and Magnified Area to increase the area of our jumps. One of our main skills in the build, along with Pounce, is Lunar Assault, gaining 10 levels from our global modifiers. We're converting physical to cold, gaining physical as cold, and the biggest one being 646% more magnitude of chill inflicted, 646% more freeze buildup. As you'll see when I showcase the build, we basically freeze all non-magic normal monsters instantaneously, hit them once and they die. Socketed in, we're using Batar's Vengeance. When we freeze a target with supported skills for each rage, we gain 1% as cold damage for 20 seconds. Again, Elemental Armament 2 to deal more elemental attack damage. Using Rakiata's Flow, so that when we hit an enemy with Lunar Assault, it treats its elemental resistances as inverted. Using Ancestral Call to boost the Lunar Assault once every 3 seconds. We're going to have this always. And Brittle Armor. Enemies frozen by supported skills have their armor broken equal to 100% of damage taken while frozen. Meaning if we hit them twice, it's basically like a 100% increase on our damage. Next skill, Ferocious Roar. This is to empower our attacks. It also breaks nearly 6,200 armor. We've socketed in Tireless for the chance not to count attacks as empowered. Raging Cry to grant us more rage. Echoing Cry to deal less damage but have more area of effect and to echo. The Batter Shout to consume broken armor to trigger the Batter Shout, as well as Corrupting Cry to give us Corrupting Blood. Our third main DPS skill is Cross Slash, again gaining the levels from modifiers plus quality and whatever. Basically, this is the skill which, when we use it, we trigger, we shapeshift into the werewolf, leap backwards. Enemies can be hit separately, and hitting a marked enemy will activate the mark. And the ice fragments that we place from our shred ability get dragged into the enemy and explode on them. We're using Rage Forge so that we can potentially gain the benefit of Cross Slash without having the proper rage, as well as to deal 35% more damage. We're using Biting Frost because we don't want to build the free. We don't care about building a freeze with this, but we do care about dealing 20% more damage to frozen enemies and consuming the freeze to deal more damage. Using Execute to deal 50% more damage when they're on low life. Again, we're almost killing everything on the map with Lunar Assault. So if we do ever use Cross Slash, we're basically killing it. Heavy swing, again for more melee damage, and overextend more for 30% more critical damage bonus. As we'll touch on in the skills panel, we are using the Shaman Ascendancy, so we are re-rolling our crits, basically guaranteeing us that cross slash will crit. Next ability, Arctic Howl, another Warcry ability, deals some cold damage, knocks back enemies. It can freeze enemies that are close to being frozen. The buff grants us 30, 37 to 56 added cold damage to our attacks, and empowered attacks deal additional cold damage. We've socketed an Ice Bite, where attacks gain 30% of damage as cold for 6 seconds on freezing. So if anything wasn't frozen by Lunar Assault, we simply howl and freeze it. Raging Cry to gain rage. Cold Exposure to inflict exposure for 8 seconds on critical hit with the skill. Echoing Cry to get the Arctic Howl to echo, as well as Blazing Critical for my attacks to gain 15% of damage as fire damage when we critically hit with Arctic Howl. And again, we're re-rolling all of our crits, so we will basically always crit. For our Spirit Spenders, we've got Herald of Ice. This is active on weapon set 2, it is weapon set 1. Herald of Ice, very straightforward. Lots of builds use it for exploding the cold damage, using Magnified Area, using Elemental Armament 2, using Aruk's Smelting, fully breaking armor with the supported skills, causes affected targets to take 5 to 20% more damage, and the skill breaks more armor. And further to breaking armor, we're using Armor Break 3 to break armor equal to 20% of physical damage dealt by a supported skill, and to gain endurance charges, paying off with Armor Explosion supported skills trigger an Armor Explosion when they fully break armor. Lastly, what I would call our ultimate ability, and one of the coolest abilities in the game, Lunar Blessing. This is our Call Down the Moon effect, so that when we hit, we call down moonbeams. On this, we're using cooldown recovery to decrease the cooldown for long duration to make the duration longer, which we also get more duration by having full rage. Magnified area to make our moonbeams have larger area of effect, more elemental damage, and cold mastery just to gain the extra levels. Our next spirit spender is Berserk, granting us the 57% increased rage effect. This I still need to get to level 20, but once I do, it'll be 60%. And then lastly, we're using Overwhelming Presence to reduce the elemental ailment threshold on enemies and to reduce their stun threshold. Moving now into our passive skill tree. Again, we're using the Shaman Ascendancy. This is basically almost the most popular Ascendancy right now, but to go through it very quickly, we're using the critical damage bonus on me. Enemy critical hits is unlucky, 12% increased critical hit chance for me. The forced outcome, again, inevitable critical hits. We re-roll them until it crits. Entwined realities to gain access to non-keystone passive skills and medium radius if allocated can be used without being connected. Gaining the skill point, gaining access to paths unseen, and gaining a skill point. Zooming out a bit just to highlight the direction my build is going. I've only got 5 levels left, so obviously I'm at the point of being in what I would consider to be ultra late endgame. But to quickly go through the tree, obviously we're taking a lot of the armor and energy shield nodes, including Bastion of the Forest. We're taking nodes like Radial Force, Guardian of the Wilds, Natural Essence. On the unseen paths, we'll eventually work our way up to getting this last life regeneration node. Life regen very good on this build because we're spending our life. Again, an unseen path going up to anger management to get plus 15 to maximum rage. We're always on maximum rage. The 200% faster loss doesn't affect us at all. Bestial Rage, gaining more rage on melee hits, and it grants us every 10 rage, also grants 12% increased physical damage. So by the time that we use a rage ability or have full rage, we hit like a truck. Reinforced Barrier, more maximum energy shield. Coming down here, Iron Slippers, more energy shield. Stand your ground, regenerate maximum life while stationary or while affected by an ailment. On weapon set 1, we've taken things like Barbaric Strength, Vulgar Methods, as well as Zealot's Oath. This is excess life regeneration is applied to Energy Shield, but it does not recharge. Um, this is for access to these nodes over here, thanks to our Ascendancy. To touch on the jewels, we're using a Time Lost Sapphire with a large radius. We're looking to get increased area of effect of notable passives in its radius. So that's what's granting us the barrier, the extras to camaraderie, uh, the extras to explosive empowerment, extinguishing exaltation, cremating cries, um, as well, where it has the small passives grant increased energy shield, and small passives also gain additional ailment threshold. Moving over to the other side of the map, on weapon set 1, we go up into Hide of the Bear to gain armor while shapeshifted, max fire res while shapeshifted, and Spirit of the Bear for increased damage against immobilized enemies, which everything will be immobilized because it's frozen. And thanks to getting the Keystone for Ancestral Bond, although we don't have totems, we gain access to Endlessly Soaring, Electrified Claw, giving us damage as extra lightning, Spirit of the Wyvern for increased accuracy and increased elemental damage while shapeshifted, Dangerous Blossom gaining extra physical damage, as well as Storm Charged, giving us 40% increased elemental damage if we've dealt a critical hit, which we always will. Our next jewel at the top of the tree is a Heart of the Well Diamond, or Heart of the Well. The best ones to get are usually the gain X% as extra. For this one, I managed to get a gain 13% as extra fire, recover 1% life, max life on kill, increased chance to inflict ailments, and then sadly the last one was pretty bad. It landed on increased mana cost efficiency. I would have loved to have this be another gain as extra, but for right now I can't afford it, and I am happy with the performance of the gem otherwise. Moving down on our tree, we also took Ancient Aegis, giving us 60% increased armor from equipped body armor, and energy shield from equipped body armor. We've come over taking another weapon set 1 to get Spirit of the Wolf for increased critical strike chance and skill speed, along with the nodes leading up to it. Down over here, we've taken the increased area of effect after kills, Calculated Hunter for increased critical hit chance but reduced skill speed, Primal Rage to gain more rage, as well as Blood Magic, which is what's converting our mana to life costs. And because of Blood Magic, we can also take the Prism Guard to apply our armor to elemental damage, as well as Vengeful Fury, gaining the rage from the armor. The last jewel here being a From Nothing Diamond. The From Nothing Diamond is allocating, is in the radius of Resolute Technique. So coming down here, the reason we're taking Resolute Technique is to gain access to things like Honorless, which is increased armor if I've been hit, and increased melee damage against immobilized enemies. Outside of the Lunar Assault, we will always be in melee range because of Shred. You could get Breaking Blows to get increased stun breakup, but we're using it to gain access to Overwhelming Strike. Again, increased critical hit chance for attacks, critical damage, stun buildup, and Unbending for 3% maximum life and increased threshold of stuns. You could also get Behemoth, 3% increased maximum life, increased area of attacks. Slam skills is not useful for us, but everything else is. You could also get Unimpeded, I think, as well as Protraction. For the weapon set 2, all of the passive points are focused on our war cries. So up here we took Extinguishing Exaltation. Down in the tree over here, we've taken the war cry cooldown speed, Guttural Roar. And then we've used our weapon point 2s to come down to this side of the tree, which is the warrior side. As we touched on in the warrior build, gaining access to Roaring Cries, Inherited Strength, as well as Vocal Empowerment. For the last 5 skill points, obviously I need to get the life regen. I believe there's a couple other points that I'm missing, but overall I'm in like the very late end game, and really the only improvements to be made are to get it to gain access to other gem diamonds to gain access to certain passives. I will now run a map and show how the build plays, as well as give some commentary on my overall thoughts for the build, what I like, what I dislike, and kind of like the breakpoints for the build. So the first thing for this build is basically you're going to come into a map and you're going to pop your the lunar blessing. This is just to gain the moonbeams. As you can see, I'm walking through the map, moonbeams on, just having a great old time, freezing everything, jumping over everything. And anything I'm not killing with the lunar assault, I am killing via shred, or I am killing via cross slash. I really, really like this build. Again, similar to my warrior build, I just really enjoy being melee range and just slapping the crap out of enemies, especially enemies like this that are supposed to be like the ultimate, most powerful dudes, and you're just beating the crap out of them, especially when it's without much effort. Um, my, I guess, the first complaint that I'll get out of the way is that I don't necessarily love that Headhunter constantly gives me the modifier that zooms me around the map. Easily my number one cause of death thus far on this character post game has been getting teleported somewhere weird on the map and just dying to a bunch of enemies that I didn't know were there. My character probably needs a little bit more health. There are certain like item breakpoints that I just can't afford. Sadly, this build and the bear build, which focuses on casting Calamity over Lunar Blessing, are both very, very popular and thus very, very expensive in the meta. And all of the gems that you would want are very expensive. All of the talisman upgrades are very expensive. And even all of the bases are very expensive. So I guess my word of caution on that is that next season, if another class isn't released that's equally as broken, or if another class isn't released that can compete with a druid, this build as well as um, the calamity based bear build will probably continue to be extremely, extremely popular and will continue therefore to be extremely, extremely expensive. Um, I really, really like the build overall. You do a ton of damage. You can see I'm really not even focused on killing things. I'm just walking through the map doing my shit. I'm even being inefficient with my roars, missing the timing, missing getting as many enemies as I should, but it's really not mattering at all to my overall damage. And obviously, as you can see, I have a huge AoE on my Lunar Slash, like half the screen. I'm getting a huge amount of AoE from the Blessing, which is giving us uh, more access to killing enemies off screen and not having to deal with them, giving us more lifesteal, more leech, and just overall increasing our DPS. I think in terms of positives, the build is very fun to play. You feel ultra powerful. You can do all content in the game easily, pinnacle bosses, abyss, um, really anything. Out out of all of the melee builds, it would be hard to say that this is not my favorite, just because right now it's the most overpowered. Um, but obviously, the main drawback being a talisman like this talisman could easily be priced at like 100 div. So if you're not being efficient with your div farming, if you didn't have access to the temple, you could easily lose out on quote unquote the best talismans in the game. And further to that same idea is like better cuffs will be high div cost, better boots will be extremely high div cost. Um, Better helmet will be somewhere high in the divs. And being as late game as we are, uh, the biggest thing is now your efficiency in the actual mapping to get currency, and b not dying. There is a bit of a experience, like shouldn't call it an experience cliff, but um, there's a big gap in terms of the experience that you need to level at this point in the game. So you have to play a lot of maps, and you have to not die. And unfortunately, I'm bad at the latter. I play a lot of maps, but I do die. Specifically, I die to stupid shit where I don't manage my resources well, or I don't pay attention to my health, or I don't cleanse something a certain way. So I would say that if you're someone who is prone to making errors, this class can be a bit punishing. But I would say overall, even if it is a little bit punishing, it more than makes up for it. And I'm gonna die. Yeah, I died. So in that case, I stood in poison like an idiot, and did not press my flask, or maybe I did, but it was delayed. Um, and stood in corruption on top of that and just killed myself. I also did not dash, which was very wise. And thanks to doing all of that, I've now gone back down to 3% experience. I think I was at like 17 before I just died. So late game, that's the biggest drop off, is if you're like me and you die stupidly, or you overestimate your power or whatever, you can get punished. For me, I think the biggest issue is I don't let my energy shield uh, recharge nearly fast enough. I just run through the map assuming that I'm going to kill everything, which is pretty dangerous and pretty silly. But honestly, like I'm not focused on hitting level 100. I don't really think that I care very much about being level 100 outside of getting like the last 5 points of my tree and seeing quote unquote like how powerful I can really be. But I don't necessarily think that I'm going to be like, it's not going to be that much different at level 100, right? There's not going to be like, maybe my stats will be a tiny bit better. Maybe I'll have access to like one or two more things, but fundamentally the build's not going to change that much. I think outside of the negative that I mentioned in terms of the price is just that between the price in general can be a bit of a deterrent, but the other side of it is that many of these wolf builds, bear builds, or whatever, they all focus on like the same stats, especially as it relates to plus levels. So that is why the economy gets a bit messed up, because you're kind of fighting for, plus physical damage, plus levels to melee skills, or other builds that also want plus melee skills or plus physical damage. But outside of the cost, I would say honestly, it is worth it to play. It was excellent at the start of the league. It's been excellent throughout the entire league. The death thing is honestly just a skill issue for me. If you're a better player, you will not have the same issue. You will easily reach level 100. You'll clear all content absolutely without thinking about it. I think really the only time that this build is distinctly weak is the break point when you do not yet have your full 8 points for ascendancy. And that is specifically because you really want to gain access to the inevitable critical hits and the hidden tree nodes. But even then, you can you can easily get a carry to do that thing and then be fine. And as we can see against map bosses, literally kill them in 2 seconds.